Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Peace, Perspective, and Poetry. I'm your hostess, Shanique, and along with me, we have your other hostess, Miss Chandra. And
hello, everyone.
hello. And we have a very special guest for you today. We have Dr. Gail Lash.
Yay!
Everyone.
All right, so Dr. Gail Lash, she has pretty much a lot of accomplishments. She is pretty much a catalyst for peace, which we all love, right? She's a teacher. She is a biochemist. What else does she do, Miss Chandra?
An author as well. We're reading these amazing books that are in progress as well. And I'm so excited to be able to read, some of these books that you have. Oh my gosh. Metaphysician, biologist. I mean, some really major accomplishment. And the biggest thing that I really love is the animal conservation.
I know, I love that too.
Animals. So I'm really interested in getting to hear more about that.
So how are you feeling today, Dr. Lash? Are you excited like we are?
I am. I'm so happy to be here. And thank you for inviting me. I just love when we can get together and talk about peace and how to make the world a better place.
Yes.
Oh, of course. See, and you are the awesome guest that we were looking for today. So that is why we are just so thrilled to have you here.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you to Ms. Dada for hosting this as well and being, inviting me as well. So just happy to meet all of you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Ms. Dada Roth, that she mentioned, she is the founder of Peace, Perspective, and Poetry. So for the audience out there who, probably have heard of her, so that's who she is. So Miss Dr. Gail Lash, what is your vision of the world where your message you feel is embraced?
Wow, what a great question. So I want to tell a little story, and I'm sure we'll get into my history and how I got to be working with peace. We'll talk about that along the way. But one day I was in Decatur, Georgia, and I was at a peace rally, and I put together a peace box. And a peace box, it's just a box. It has an in peace on it,
Mm-hmm.
And all of the people that were coming by to the rally, we had tables and folders, and lots of different organizations were there. Lots of people from all walks of life and all ages. And I opened my box and I had one question in there. And it said, what would a world of peace look like?
Wow.
Or what would be in it?
Oh, wow.
And then I had index cards and pens, and people would get out the cards and they would write whatever came to them. And you would not believe all these beautiful things that people would write. In fact, I have a couple here that I can share with you. And then that's leading up to the answer to your question. One person wrote on an index card, she said, a peaceful world would have all people coming out of their homes, gathering in parks, the beach, water fountains, with only one agenda: to listen, learn, and share, with no judgment and just sharing the joy of their hearts.
Wow.
Another one said, we are one in all ways. Let's heal disparity. Another one said, world at peace, harmony with nature and others. Another one said, respect for all. So you get the idea. We all have peace in our hearts. We all know that kind of what it could look like, but that's really what my vision is. My peace box vision, if you will, of a world at peace would be one where we would all get to know each other. We would all know, we'd listen, as the one person said. We would become friends. We would find out the beauty of the diversity on earth, not only the animals, and I do want to talk about that later,
Yeah.
but also the diversity of the cultures and the races and the histories of people that we may know nothing about. And so it's one where we can solve problems together in unity and honoring the diversity of the planet.
Right.
Awesome.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. And leading to the next, what would everyday, that's a great segue into this next question. What would everyday life look like?
Oh, wow. So this is a great question, and it gets into some of the books I'm writing. I am writing a series of young adult novels, and her quest is to do just that, is to create peace on earth. It's actually to find these magical animal charms and, whatever. We'll get into that later. But it's about, use your imagination. What could a world at peace look like? It really, I think we would have neighborhoods in where people lived and they would get to know each other, and you'd have your local grocery stores and your local walkable communities. In other words, we'd change our transportation system. In other words, we would have our education system where it could be free for everyone, because it is a right for everyone to be educated. And that could be online. I know that the internet is changing. Blockchain will become the norm in the near future. And certainly the way that we store data will change. And so education, and as well as many different fields, medical and our governments, can all be ones where people consult with each other and learn about each other and come down to how we can have a healthy people and healthy planet as well.
Oh, I can't wait to live there.
Well, and that's great, Chandra. It really, it's, we already, how can I put this? This is going to sound strange. We already are. Mm-hmm. And I do want to bring in kind of the metaphysical component, or the way that we each create the environment around us. And that's what quantum physics talks about. Our thoughts create reality. So you said, I can't wait to live there. You can live there. And, right. And I really would love to, I'm sure we'll chat about that in a minute, of how do we do that? How can we get there? So.
Oh, question for the audience. So just tell a little bit more in depth about, you mentioned blockchain. So just tell the audience, please, a little bit more in depth what that is.
Oh, wow. Well, you can Google it. I'm no expert in it, but it is, what I know about it is it's the way to store data. And it's used in cryptocurrency right now, but it's also used in education and medical data storage. It's where the data are stored on these blocks, if you will, and they are then only, how can I put it? Then they change after, say, 10 minutes into another block, which has all of the data from the previous block plus data from the new block. So that they're very secure, they're very hard to hack. And so it's a way that it's decentralized. It's not in one location, a central location, but it is decentralized and kind of power to the people, if you will. It's spread out. So again, if you were to change the data in one, like try to hack into a bank or whatever, you would have to change all of them at the same time within that short time frame. So it's actually a very wonderful oneness,
yeah.
Oneness,
like a VPN, oneness, yeah.
Well, you would think centralized would be oneness. What I'm talking about is that power back to the people, to where we can all work together and actually be in charge of our data. And you and I can have transactions, and we can really have it be where it's more secure that way and more transparent.
That sounds awesome. So like, what do you think, like some of the benefits for others would be?
Others, benefits of what? Are we talking about blockchain? Are we talking about peace?
well, both.
All the above?
Yes.
Well, like I said, I'm no expert in blockchain. I just know that I do, because of my background in biology and economics and policy of natural resources. I work with zoos and aquariums. My husband and I design zoos and aquariums around the world. And a lot of the educational and conservation organizations are using now blockchain technology to store educational data. For example, if you do a service project like Wangari Maathai and you plant thousands of trees, you can store the data, the GPS data from where those trees are, each one of them, where they're located, and who planted it, what child, planted it, and what the soil components were. And then you can take all the data of the weather as it grows as to what's influencing that tree. And then you can come back, and put the data all together. It's just a way to store large amounts of information. And as we know, we are in an information age.
Right.
So information and attention is really the new currency. And so we need to work together to come up with what's worth putting our attention on, number one, and that's a whole huge discussion.
Yeah.
And then how we can help each other be creative, because humans are so creative. We can come up with all these amazing new inventions, these new ways that we can bring not only peace to the planet, but really prosperity,
Yeah.
and back to the health, back to the thriving lifestyle that we all deserve.
Yeah.
I love that. Don't you, Shonda?
I do, absolutely.
That
Yeah.
was an amazing answer, and that was exactly what we were looking for. Definitely love it.
Absolutely. So Gail, what awakened you to your message, to your overall message? I know you talked about oneness, and I'm really big on oneness and understanding how that affects, the world, humanity, where no separation, no division, but we're all understanding, but so what awakened you to your overall message?
Exactly. That's a great question.
Mhm.
So I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I grew up with a upper middle class family. My father was an accountant, a CPA. He had his own business. He kind of did some side business with cronies in the oil industry, so we had enough. I was raised with with membership to the local sort of club that we could go with their swimming pool, and and I had a coming out debutante ball at 16. I mean, it was all the old-fashioned white privilege stuff, and so I had all of that. But what I didn't have was peace when I grew up, because my dad was an alcoholic, and he yelled a lot. He would come home and scream over just some trivial way, something with my mom. And so I would go hide in my room and pet my dog, and we would travel in my mind or in books to other places. Or I would go to nature. I would go outside. We had a pond on the other side of the neighborhood, and I would go feed the ducks and just sit there under the sky and listen to the wind and watch the snakes slither into the water. And really it became my sanctuary. It became my peace sanctuary. Yeah. So that's really what stepped me on this path. But I didn't label it peace until really after, when I was doing my dissertation, my Ph.D. work, because I became a biologist because I love nature. And then in working with animals, I realized that I wanted to work with people, because you can't care for animals until you have prosperity among people who are already, trying to conserve the animals around the world. And then I got involved in ecotourism and, as I said, economics and policy of natural resources. And then I realized, as I traveled around the world, I was very blessed to be able to travel with not only my parents, but with conferences as well, and in my work. I got to see we're all the same. Yeah. People are really all the same around the planet. We have different cultures, different languages, but we all want the same thing for our families. And the commonality. And that's where the overarching, peace became really my passion.
Oh, that is awesome. I love that. I love, like how, when you were younger and then like you just got into like nature and animals as an escapism and everything. Like I'm kind of similar the same way. I'm sure maybe Shonda is probably the same way too. Absolutely. I totally love that. So next question. So, is there any part of, your message for peace that maybe people don't really understand, or they kind of, you feel misunderstood?
That's an interesting question. I think for years, peace became synonymous with the 1960s and the peace movement and hippies. And it was kind of as Louise Diamond coins, a dirty word, not something that people thought had substance and was not just a utopian dream. Nowadays, though, and I find in the last 20 years or so, it's been very interesting because the word peace has come up in all walks of life, in all different, in government discussions, in corporate discussions, and educational teachings, etc. And it really is on the forefront of our minds, obviously now with the war in Ukraine. And so and many other atrocities that are happening around the world at the moment. So peace is becoming more understood in a way, but it's not just about no war. It's very much about it's work, it's about envisioning. And that's why I was talking about the peace box and the visions of what would a world look like, because we have to think about it first. We have to create it in our mind and our heart. And then we have to birth it out into the world. It's like if you're going to build a building, you have to think about what you want and then write down the architectural plans and then hire the contractor to then step by step, brick by brick, board by board, build what you want. Right. And that's very much what we're doing here in the world. And so I think peace is not understood. If I asked you, do you want peace? You'd go, oh, well, yeah, you feel it. But then I said, well, how do you do it? That's what we need to start teaching.
Right. So how has it evolved from the point when you started until now? Because I'm sure you've seen so many different changes within your message into now, because we're just forever changing. So how
especially
have you evolved it?
Especially from the 60s to now, like you mentioned.
Because it reminds me too, in Nepal, I don't know, Gail, you probably, the whole community that they built in Nepal, a lot of what you're saying too, but it was kind of infiltrated with the government as well, because peace can be sometimes threatened. People could feel threatened by it, because we're so used to chaos, So how have you seen that evolved from sharing it the first time?
So I want to hear more, Chandra. So about Nepal. Tell me a little bit more about your.
Well, I read many years ago because I was so fascinated with Nepal, right? Because I'm heavily into meditation. I promote forever oneness. I promote oneness, mind, body, and soul, because I feel like, a lot like you, I grew up in a very chaotic household. So the way I found peace within myself is through singing, through going to the park, walking by myself, to the park and sitting and just writing, to be able to express the emotions that I was feeling inside of myself, so I totally relate with you in that. So in researching more about meditation and really getting into that, I discovered Nepal, right? And in the 1960s, I cannot remember her name, so I'm not going to try to butcher it. There was a woman who created this utopia, and it was like an experiment. And she had the approval of the government there to build a system a lot like you're talking about. And it worked for many years, where government wasn't involved. You had the elders, you had people who were working together in oneness. Everyone was pretty much, it was equality, everyone wanted the same thing. And it was successful for many years. But then people, it started getting fearful of it. Outside government started getting fearful of it. So the community was infiltrated, and then it was like, oh, all of these different threats that came, and it kind of dismantled, but I was like, I want to go to Nepal because I do believe, as you, that we can have that. And I believe the peace does start within first, and then it is executed outward. So how do we, get that? Yes.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. That's great information. And it makes sense. We're changing as a humanity from, let me put it this way, humanity is going, I believe, from childhood to adulthood.
Absolutely.
It started out as clans and tribes and villages and towns and city-states and nations. And now we're a global society. And very much our dependency on each other has changed completely. And so when you start out with an example like you just gave, to where you have this community that's formed in the the way that we all see in our hearts we would like to
Yes.
be living, then it works in that area. But then it's about, how can I put it, infiltrating the whole world, with that kind of
Yeah.
mindset. And I think humanity may not have been ready for it back then. In other
Right.
words, we have raised our consciousness now, and so much more now we know, and particularly with COVID and all of our interdependency, we know that we're dependent on each other as a global economy, of global systems, travel, everything is interwoven, just like the World Wide Web. So now people are becoming, I won't say they're becoming interested
Absolutely.
in finding more about other cultures and other peoples, and perhaps even moving to another place like I have. We'll get into that in a minute. But that it's people are more open to receiving or developing those types of communities or those types of collaborations.
I agree with you.
That is awesome. And those of you in our audience who are listening by phone, our passcode is 03113. So if you guys can tune it so you guys can just see a visual. All right, so awesome. So our next question we have here is as far as peace-wise, because you said you were back, in the 1960s, and you also mentioned, times are changing. So do you think, like, which generation you think, as far as like maybe the young people, how is it affecting them today?
How is peace affecting them today, or how is the world affecting
Yes.
them?
Well, you could say the world, this generation, like pretty much, if they're, as far as peace is concerned, like, do you see it kind of more, the younger people want more peace? Do you see them more getting involved, or do you see it kind of the same as like the 1960s?
Oh gosh. Well, so let me just say this. I was very young in the 60s. Very, very young. So, but I had older brothers that were definitely involved in all of that. They were much older than me. And so, and we all know about that era as well. But, young people today, I applaud them. It is such a hard place to live right now in the chaos of the world. And thank you, Gen Z and the ones coming up, that it's so important to give you power. I mean, this is the point. These are magical people that are being born on the earth right now, and that
Absolutely.
are under 20. And it's so important to listen to how they're feeling, because it is there's so much anxiety in the world now, because it looks like it's chaos and doom and terrible things are happening. And much of that is because we don't focus on the good that is happening, not only in the media, but even in our own lives, just focusing on, hey, what went right today, and how can I make it better, rather than the terrible things that are happening. And of course, the last 2 years, so much has happened to bring anxiety to the world and to young people, and it's very different than previous generations, the way that they have to navigate the world. So that said, there is such potential, though. There is so much creativity in the human race, and particularly with young people. I would say under 30, it's young to me, but but certainly under even 15. I mean, we need to give the youth the chance to voice their concerns, but to see that peace is possible. This is the point. I think of the older, or what I am doing right now. My mission is to show people that peace is possible, and to put it on their agenda, because it is so important that we realize that out of the chaos can come the calm, can come the new inventions, can come the ways that all of the pollution in the oceans is just eaten up with new kinds of bacteria. And I mean, it can be miracles that happen. So as we raise our consciousness, as we begin to look toward the calm in the chaos, that we can work together with the experience of the older generations and the new innovations and wisdom of the youth coming up in collaboration is just going to be magical, I think.
Oh,
I,
love
I
that. Love
yeah,
that.
I agree with that. Would you both agree that with the new generation, they're a lot more sensitive than we
Yes,
are,
very much.
and
Yes.
they are absolutely challenging our
Yeah.
outdated belief systems and how, oh, it is what it is, you know, suck it up, tough it up, and they're like, no,
No,
I
no.
feel. They're the I feel generation.
That's a
Right?
great way to put it. I like that. And
Yeah.
you're very correct, because all of the old outdated, all of the systems that we have now need to go. I mean, that's what the
Absolutely.
basic line is.
Yep.
They are outdated, and they need to be upgraded and changed, or completely wiped away and a whole new one created. So there are going to be many, many changes in the next 5 years
I
or
agree.
10. It's the world will look very different. And we've learned this obviously in the last 2 years with COVID. Everyone uses Zoom now. And here in Belize, where I am, the school systems didn't even have internet sometimes. And now, oh my gosh, they've gone online with their courses. So it's very much that the world is learning how to move forward in these new ways.
Absolutely.
That is good, but they do need to toughen up a little bit. What I mean by that is, for example, like back in my day, if I wanted to try out for like a particular team, if I didn't have the skill, I didn't make the team, and I cried and everything like that. But I went home, worked hard, worked to get the talent, and then, by next year, tried out for the team, and I made it. So it made me, persevere. It gave me character, it builds character. So, but nowadays in this generation, because, you mentioned that, everyone is so scared about hurting everyone's feelings, and everyone's too sensitive. And, so I just kind of feel that, you know, with teams today, they just kind of want everyone to be happy. So they give everybody a trophy, So if that was the case, for example, the Olympics, why not give everybody a gold medal, right? So, but I definitely agree with what you're saying.
Shanique, you bring up a great point. Humanity has been raised to be competitive. And it started out, as Joy DeGruy talks about, in the colder climates, humans had to store food for the winter because they didn't have enough. In the tropical latitudes where you have, where it's warmer and you have fruit, all year round, you didn't have to store things. So the whole history of humanity has been where we've had this competition in really, how can I put it, the Western world or the colonial world. And it's a mindset that took over our civilization. It took over our society with private property rights and, taxation and all kinds of things that are talking about, this is mine. I have to hold on to it. It's me, and I deserve it, and it's mine, and you can't have it. And so that competition, even in sports, as you brought up, it comes from those thinking patterns, if you will. In the future, and I think this is important, where the young people really are, as you said, very much feeling and very sensitive, we are going toward that unity. We're going toward the oneness, where we have to be aware that everyone is on the same playing field as far as equal in human rights, and everyone has different talents and skills, obviously, but we're all fundamentally equal. And so that those kinds of games that we will create in the future, I wonder what they'll look like. Maybe everyone does get a trophy, or as you said, if we want to continue the Olympics, which is a grand thing to do, I think, because it really brings the world together. And I've been privileged to live in 2 cities while they've had the Olympics, there and the 10. So it was just, it's a feeling of the unity of the world. It's really wonderful. But it does require competition. And so you're right, we need to, each individual, and they're striving to make myself a better person. I need to work on me, and I need to work if I want to become a tennis player, or a javelin thrower or whatever, to practice and get there. And I obviously wouldn't deserve a spot unless I was really, really, really good.
Right.
So we have both of these things going on of personal growth and service to humanity, to where we help each other.
Right. Right. So it's a delicate dance of expertise and fairness, right?
Good point,
And as you said, right, I think what we're seeing is the opposite, right? So back then it was competitive. Now you have, as Shanique was saying, they're too sensitive, right? So now we're trying to find the middle ground. And as we continue to evolve, we're going to come in balance with that middle ground. So right now we're just experiencing, in my opinion,
Right.
Two extremes until we find that middle ground as we're going into that.
I agree.
And you used a great word, balance. I think it's very important to be in balance.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Absolutely. So with that, is there anything peace related that you feel should be addressed immediately? Like right now?
Oh, wow. What a question. I mean, obviously we're in Ukraine is in a war.
Yeah.
But peace related. I mean, everything is related to peace. Yeah. So I kind of would say peace related, it's really about, all right, the news has these terrible things happening on it. If I were to choose to watch the news, it is up to me to develop the peace within inside myself to be able to do that and not hurt my physical body by having the cortisol levels go up and developing all kinds of stress, and to not hurt my family, to get angry and frustrated and and affect them as well. So it's back to what we were saying earlier of the peace begins within. And I think that's what really needs to be addressed right now is, yes, there are terrible things happening in the world. Yes, there's tragedies going on. And to be able to look at them with a sense of, I'm going to use a controversial word, with a sense of detachment. And what I mean by that is that I'm able to sit back and watch and not jump and get all, fighting mad or whatever it might be. Because with detachment, I can then choose. And that's another huge word right there, is choose what my actions will be. Do I want to, get on a plane and go over there and fight? That's an option. Do I want to give money? That's an option. Do I want to simply pray? That's an option. So there's lots of ways when we detach back, we can look at something from a neutral standpoint, from that balance we were talking about, and really come to an action that we want to take that is meaningful for me, that makes sense for me, and then go and act, take some action on that.
So being the observer, so then we can respond instead of reacting.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So I also know that you're also an author, correct? And you have a series of books coming. So your series of books, Dancing Through the Spirit Gates, could you tell us some more about that?
Dancing Through the Spiral Gates.
Spiral Gates. I apologize.
No, it's good. It's good. So right now I'm actually completing the book Opt for Peace, OPT, Opt for Peace, 9 Essential Steps to Creating Peace, Power, and Prosperity. And that one will probably be out by the summer or the fall. And it's really about how we can all achieve peace both in ourselves and society. But the ones you referred to, Dancing Through the Spiral Gate, has been with me and been wanting to be written for over 10 years. And this wonderful girl named Lucy has been occupying my brain. And she is traveling to 9 different countries with 9 different animals and with 9 different peace powers, and finding peace around the world and solving different things that are going on in each of those countries, different challenges, and on this overall quest to create peace in the world. So it is wonderful. The first book is set in South Africa with the white lion. And she's going there to learn the powers from the white lion. She is a multiracial young girl who lives in Belize, and her mother is director of the zoo. And so it's a wonderful tale of what's important, what's important in our lives, and how we can really find those gifts within and overcome the obstacles to bring those gifts out to the world, and coordinate with the animals, with nature, how we can get back to that oneness with nature and tune into the nature of who we are to then make progress for humanity and for all life on earth.
Oh, wow. I love that. Like, where were these books when I was growing up? I love that.
They'll be out soon. Another year and a half or so, but they'll be coming.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I see a television show in the works.
I envision, movie, Netflix, something definitely visual as well.
That's awesome.
Wow. I mean, like Shanique, I would love to read those books because I am really into like the sci-fi and the fantasy books,
Mhm.
Well, and Lucy, I didn't say Lucy speaks to the animals, so she can understand them and speak to them as well.
Animal whisperer. I love it because it feels like it's a lot of you as well in these books.
Definitely.
Yes, I love that.
Well, we write about what we know, and I've been so blessed to have just multiple opportunities to develop who I am and my talents and skills. And so, and we each do. We each have our own story that is just amazing and who we are. And I think that's so important to bring those stories forth and really honor the diversity of each person, not just of the human race, but of who we each are. We wear different hats, we have different skills, and we can learn so much from working together and as I said, interacting with nature. As I'm very aware that humanity has lost its connection to nature in many, many ways. And so that's one of my passions, is to bring that back.
Right. No, I agree. That is awesome. So you mentioned earlier that you traveled to so many different places like Ecuador, Belize, Indonesia, Brazil, Thailand, and stuff. Like, do you have a favorite country? Like, which one more spoke to you? Like, you felt like you got your message across, you impacted them, like, tell us more about that.
Oh, thanks, Shanique. You're right. They all were magical in their own way. And I loved being able to go to places like Madagascar and work with the lemurs and meet the people, wow. I can't even remember the names of the different, it's amazing. The different cultures that we met and worked with, but it's because it was so many years ago, but nevertheless, it's just that every place is special and different. And in fact, because of the travels, I created my company Tourism for Peace, because I thought it was very important for people to do that, to travel and to learn, as I said, that we're all the same and with just different ways of living in our look and dress and language, but not in our hearts. And so I started taking people on journeys to really a spiritual place, to experience the specialness, the spiritualness of the location and of the people. But then that evolved more into giving education classes and doing that, my Peace Brain studies that I teach. But you asked about the countries, and I originally did my work here in Belize, Central America, and it used to be British Honduras. It used to be a British colony. So English is the national language, but it's wedged in between Mexico and Guatemala on the Caribbean Sea. And so Spanish is very much spoken here. The Mayan people are still here from, they have many different archaeological sites here from the classical Mayan periods. And then of course there's Creole and there's Chinese and there's Lebanese and there's Mennonites are here, and just the diversity of the people in the country is amazing. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with Belize when I came to do my work here on ecotourism at the Community Baboon Sanctuary. which is
Wow.
about howler monkeys. And so I always thought, this is a place maybe I want to return to and live. And so I was fortunate about 8 years ago to be able to buy a very small little piece of land. And then right before, again, just divine inspiration and guidance in 2019 came along to say, hey, it's time to move from Atlanta, Georgia. We were really blessed to be in this wonderful Victorian house that was built in 1894 for 25 years, my husband and I. And it was time to move. It was time to go. And I said, let's build something in Belize on that little piece of land. And so we did. And we were very fortunate that we got to move here just before COVID hit, literally the day before the borders shut down. And so I
Wow.
now live in Belize, Central America, and I'm so blessed to do that. And it's really been, again, divine guidance, I think, that led me here, because this is a great place to do the writing. It's a very peaceful place. It's been a great place to watch the world and to be able to assimilate and recognize the greater picture that's going on here in the world with things that are playing out in humanity, and to be able to distill that down into my writings.
Yeah. Wow. Tourism for peace, I think that's such a great idea. I mean, I've traveled, I lived in Hawaii, and I just got back from Mexico. I was living there for 2 months. And it's so important for people to travel and experience different cultures so we can see, the commonality that we have, and it will bring us into a better state of peace. So I love that tourism for peace, because it addresses the bigger issue that we have, because we can be in our bubble and we think that is all that's what's happening, right? And then the places that you've also went, that you're in and you've gone to, is heavily nature centered. I mean, all of Earth is heavily nature centered, but it's something about those like Belize and, Guatemala, all of those places that it really gets you in tune, with nature, where you want to shut off the phone and you want to go inward, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's very important to realize that. And I love this about zoos. That's a whole nother discussion, obviously, of zoos and aquariums and whether we should have animals in captivity and under human care. But I will tell you this, that in the last 30 years or so that I've been working with zoos, they have come so far, and particularly in North America with the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums, or just the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, AZA. There are about 240 accredited institutions that are a membership of the AZA. And so they have to have high standards, and conservation and education is right up there with, obviously, animal welfare is the top value of these institutions. And so they offer a place where you can really experience nature in an urban setting. And many of them have little urban backyards and actually teach the public, look at what's in your backyard. Look at what is in your neighborhood, like I had with the pond that I escaped to, as a child. And so it's so important to put these parks and these places in our urban settings where we can go. And I will say that after 9/11, when there was a zoo conference happening at that time, actually, the annual conference with over 2,000 people attending, zoo professionals in St. Louis. And so we all helped each other get back home. I had to go home to Atlanta. And all the zoos that I know have opened up as free places, and botanical gardens as well, for people to go for solace right after 9/11. They are places of peace, and parks are so important to get back into nature, to find that solidarity, that connection with nature. So part of my mission with my peace master plans and peace brain classes is really for people, particularly if you are affiliated with a school or maybe with some organization, corporation or school or hospital even, is to create a peace park, is to create a place where you can have adjacent to your physical location, where people can get out into nature and they can sit and they can meditate and they can just find that quiet time, that downtime. I know that several hospitals now have put in labyrinths, and a labyrinth is a walking meditation garden.
Wow.
There's one way in and one way out. You don't get lost like in a maze.
Right.
So, but it's wonderful because the surgeons can walk it and center themselves before doing surgery. Family of people in the emergency room can go out and walk the labyrinth and say prayers or center themselves that their loved one is in the emergency room. These are special places that we need to create around our cities and in our rural areas as well, of course, but really to allow people to have these peace parks, these places of peace sanctuaries, where they can have not only a place to center themselves, but to then have dialogue
Right.
that gets diverse people together and says, okay, what do we need to solve in our city? What are the problems? How can we communicate and consult to do that, to find solutions? So these are safe places, in other words. And we actually started cataloging these places in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States, into something called the Atlanta Peace Trails. And, if you had 5 of the places in one area, that would be Trail A, or if you had 6 in this other area, that'd be Trail B. So it's a start. It was based on a trail that was in Bradford, England, called the Bradford Peace Trail, which had a lot of World War II monuments. And actually the person who invented the peace sign was from Bradford, England. And so it honored his work. For example, in the first nursery school that was outdoors, that brought children outdoors, was also in Bradford, England. And that was honored on their peace trail. So I envision, one of my visions is that each school and organization and hospital, bank, whatever, store creates their own little peace garden and then links it together in peace trails around the world for World Peace Trails.
That is awesome. That is fabulous. So to our listeners out there, we didn't forget about you guys. So anyone out there listening want to give their input or have any questions for Miss Dr. Gail Lash? Don't be shy.
Happy to answer questions.
Yes, so just unmute.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming, whomever you are. I know we've got a few people on the call.
They're shy. They'll be shy.
It's okay. Or you can put something in the chat, maybe.
Or if anyone wants to make a statement or anything, maybe their own personal experience about peace and how peace has helped them or brought them closer to a better life or better understanding.
Right.
Miss Shanique, we heard from Miss Shonda. Tell me a little bit about your peace journey.
Okay, okay. Well, my childhood was sort of similar. As far as like, I had a great childhood, but I'm an only child. So where my imagination came in, where, normally you'd have siblings to play with, and I wasn't that fortunate. I just had to be myself and die. But that helped with my creativity. I would just go outside and all of a sudden my backyard became this jungle, and with my imagination, there were animals and jaguars and parrots and, just anywhere pretty much. I got into nature and, my mind would just go off to fantasy and everything like that. So when I started getting older, I started to doing dance and I started writing a lot. I started reading books. That helps with my creativity too, because when you read, your mind just wanders and you go into like some different dimension, you become different characters. So, and then as far as I guess I started becoming a storyteller, I guess around in high school. I would just kind of act out stories to some of my classmates right before class started. And it like literally it would kind of transition to the next day and the next day, and everyone would be like, oh my gosh, you're a storyteller. And I was just trying to kill time. I was just bored. But it was actually good because my imagination, my different type of stories, brought all different types of people together because they were fun, entertaining, and they were lighthearted, and it brought them peace right before they went to class. And it would be something they would look forward to the next day. And then that made me, I'm like, oh, there's something here. And people would tell me, oh, you should be a writer. You should be a writer. You just have this imagination. So I started going to school to be a writer. And so now I do screenwritings, and I also became a teacher as well. And yeah, so I teach Miami-Dade County employees. And in elementary school, I wasn't fortunate enough to have as many positive teachers. A lot of them were bullies and they picked on me. They had their own issues, so so when it was my turn, because I experienced that, I didn't want for the people to I didn't want to them to go through what I went through as a child. So anyone who was kind of slower with learning, or they didn't grasp something the way how everybody else did, I would just kind of say, like, class, we're all a team, we help one another, we work together. So and I became a very one of the best teachers there, because there was no negativity, and I made sure of that. I was just like, the number one thing was peace and teamwork, and everyone loved that. And other teachers started kind of, they're like, oh, I can't control my class, or no one's listening or paying attention, like, how do you do that? I'm just like, because I'm not power hungry. I generally want everyone to learn. I generally want everyone to respect each other, and because when you work together, there is peace, there's a natural peace. And when everyone is just equal, and because you have some teachers that they do get power hungry, and they use their classroom to, take out their frustrations. I was never like that. I generally want people to learn, and I would want them to learn a quick way. I just kind of got to the point, bada bing, bada boom, bada bada. You got it.
I love that, Shanique. Thank you. That's such a wonderful way to share that you taught your students. And this is the point. I think you're making a really great point, that our whole life experiences really shape us as to who we are. And so you knew what you didn't want. And so you obviously changed that around for your students. And then you've taught them what they obviously, I'm sure, felt in their hearts was really wonderful for them. So then they have a model in you that they can go forward and be that peace in the world. So good job. Excellent job. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Do you have any poems that you wanted to?
Oh, I do. I do. Miss Dada asked me about my poems. It's interesting because I'm writing these books now, but I did so much writing when I was younger. And I actually still have a notebook, a 3-ring binder, just filled with poems and prose and short stories and things that I did when I was in high school and then college. And it was really fun to go back over those actually and see what that was, to see how long peace has been important to me. So I do have a poem that I can share. I actually have a couple, but I'll just do one right at the moment. It's very short. Color and ink is my life. I love to write. On a day like today, peace is around. Music and color runs through my soul. Life is fun. It can be hell. But peace is there for us to grab it when we want it.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yay.
I know, right? That's
you.
Beautiful.
Do you have one more?
I do. Okay.
If you like to share, no pressure.
Yeah, no, I can. This one goes. The morning light shone gently through the window. Soft, sparkling rays of light drifted across my face. The world outside shone with beauty, while the world inside me lived in a feeling of total peace. Many exciting things are available in this world to me. So many things to do. If you know where to find it, you will find peace and guidance in life.
Yes.
Beautiful. Yes, very beautiful.
Thank you.
You know, in poetry, being able to express yourself creatively, and like Shanika was saying, in her childhood and even now, you know, processing your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings through writing, you know, through putting it into a poem, into a short story, you know, into a script, you know, is very healing as well. So yeah, thank you. And I know I've used that to help me a lot through my healing process and being peaceful within.
It's a great way, you're right,
It
because
is.
it's private and yet it's creative, and you can share it if you choose, obviously. I know between my friends and I, and I'm sure you all did the same, of, you know, when you had special letters, or, well, we wrote letters back then.
We wrote letters too. Me too.
But it was interesting that, you know, texting obviously hadn't been invented, but when I was going through all of the things to purge, when we moved here to Belize, we completely downsized and, you know, got rid of most of our stuff to come to this new country and this new life. And I found lots of letters that not only my grandparents had written to each other and my mother, but that I had written back in high school to my boyfriends and to my girlfriends, and just really wonderful reminiscence of what life was like back then, and what was important to me. So it's really interesting to see how expressing oneself in journals or letters, or just in the written word is very healing. Absolutely.
I have journals from 1994 or 30, like when I was in high school, that I will go back and read, and you're like, oh my God, this is what I was going through, and how you evolve from that, you know, just kind of see, you know. So yeah. And letters too, from friends too. I have all these letters just like you. So yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Same with poems. Like I look back at some of my poems, you know, because I tend to write really great poems when like I'm in love. I become like Shakespeare and everything, you know. Like all these different words, I become so articulate and it just flows. And then, you know, after like a couple years back, I look back at these poems and I'm just like, what? You know, so it's like, I'm like, this is great stuff. But depending on my feeling that day, you know, it's like, whoa, I went deep there. And then if I try to do it again, maybe it won't be as deep. So like I have to be caught in that moment to write it down. If someone's like, hey, write a poem, I wouldn't be as successful. I have to feel it.
Well, I want to say, Ms. Shanique, that you and all of us, when we go within, when we find that wonderful peace within ourselves, and we channel our highest good, you know, the divine essence of who we each are, that is where the creativity and the inspiration and the, as you said, love, when we get in that love space of loving ourselves, of loving life, of loving, um, just being in that wonderful oneness, then those words flow, and that the creativity flows, the dance flows, the music flows, the words flow. And it's so important to practice that. And that's what I think, that's what my peace brain is all about. It's about connecting your head and your heart. You know, how can we connect our to our spiritual self, our highest part of who we are, and really get back into that heart space, that love space, as you're saying. And you're right, it's a great example. It's when we are in love, we are in that love, that heart space. So the creativity just flows. But it's also, we can do that any day and any moment. Back to the very first thing you came up with, Ms. Shonda, of, you know, I want to live in a world like that. Well, it is here now, when we can find it within ourselves.
Any last words before we go? Because it's almost 8 o'clock. So any last for viewers?
Oh gosh, I would just encourage everyone, and I'm sorry we didn't give time for it, if anyone wanted to give a shout out, or whomever is on this call, but thank you all for showing up, and for all of you listening now at a later date. I really appreciate that you've tuned in, that you're putting peace as a priority in your life, and at least you want to find out about it. You know, thank you for coming here today, because it's really important to start dialoguing, to start talking about peace and to really make it be part of the normal everyday conversation. And don't feel afraid to talk about it, that it's something that's elusive. It actually is something that's very, very doable. And I think if we each practice that centering, that balance, and really starting to love ourselves, who we each are, then we will definitely create peace on the planet. So
Well,
thank you all for
awesome.
being here.
Thank you so
And
much,
as-
Dr. Gail Lash.
Yeah, and as you say, activate your peace brain.
Yes,
Right?
yes, absolutely.
This has been Peace, Perspective, and Poetry with Shanique and Shonda. Thank you all. Come again. Till next time.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.